and welcome to Uncovering Our Hidden History. My name is Anna. I'm a genealogist as well as a historical researcher, and I started this channel in order to be able to find like-minded researchers and to be able to show the information that I was finding. And so if you have found your way here, welcome. We're very happy to have you join us. And couple of things: you are more than welcome to take screenshots in order to study for yourself or pass them on to others that you think would benefit. And this particular episode is going to be adults only. No, this is not family learning today, and nobody under the age of 16. Okay, it's adult content. All right, I will see you in a minute. Well, sweet friends, it is so good to be back with you again for another week. Good news, we're still alive, so that's a good thing. And let's see. Well, we are going to be moving on to part 2 of our Illuminati discussion, and I have some tidbits for you guys today. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, just a second. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the Illuminati and its architects. Okay, for those of you that are new, this is just a fair use warning saying I'm allowed to borrow things from other researchers or things that I find under the auspices of, or for the purpose of criticism, teaching, critiquing, so on and so forth. That way I don't get any copyright infringements. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of recap from our last video. So, an historically important event with regards to the Jews came about in the year 1666. An important prophet leader by the name of Sabbatai Zevi had arose, declaring himself to be the long-awaited Jewish Messiah. Zevi was born in the year 1626 in western Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. And so, again, if you're new to my channel, I differentiate between the Hebrews, which the Bible talks about, and the Jews. The Jews are a Turkic people that converted to Judaism around this, 700, 800s AD. And so we are not talking about, when we're talking about this, we're talking about the Jews, not the Hebrews. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to my playlist and go to the Kingdom of Israel series playlist I have, and you can learn all about what the difference is. Okay. So I popped up a map of Anatolia there so you can see what it looked like before it was Turkey. These people, they're always changing names, right, to confuse us. So, but it sits in the same place. It sat in the same place that Turkey does today, and which was also back in the 700s and after Khazaria. The Khazarian Empire was there as well. Okay, so Zevi claimed that they, the Jews, must liberate the sparks of holiness hidden within through that which seems to be evil. So this is their strange religion. It's based on the Lurianic Kabbalah and ties back into the Zohar and the Talmud. So Zevi would perform actions that violated traditional Jewish taboos, such as eating fats and animals that were forbidden by Levitical dietary law. Zevi would then conduct celebrations on holy days where fasting was required and would do the opposite, making them feast days. And then he would do the same for feast days. He would make them like fast days. According to his bizarre doctrine, the process of redemption would remain incomplete as long as the last divine sparks of holiness and good continue to be trapped in the impure realms. The rupture in the universe created a separation of opposites, in particular a split between the masculine and the feminine aspects of both God and primordial man. Now, again, this is their tradition according to the Lurianic Kabbalah, which is complete nonsense. It does not align with Scripture whatsoever. Okay. The world, instead of being comprised of the pristine archetypal values of wisdom, understanding, knowledge, love, judgment, beauty, etc., was now formed of the broken, displaced, and obscured lights and vessels as they coalesced as kelipot, or husks. As a result of the breaking of the vessels, the primordial Adam was himself partly shattered into a multitude of individual souls, who themselves are comprised of the same fragments, or kelipot, that formed our world, in which are exiled and alienated in the other side, which is the dark realm below. And this is kind of encapsulated in the below picture, which you can see. All of this comes from Babylon. It all comes from Babylon. And so the tree thing with the balls of light or color is the Sephiro. Okay. So he believed that the task of individual men and women is to extract those sparks that are his or her fortune to encounter in life and to raise and spiritualize them so as to reconstitute the Sephiro and the figure of the primordial man as 5 visages or personalities of God, and restore the harmony of the opposites, as well as the conjugal relations between the masculine and feminine aspects of God, man, and the world. So that all was a description that came from New Kabbalah, and the website's there if you want to do more research on that. And so what we call the 6-pointed star, or some people call it the Seal of Solomon, it actually goes back to Babylon, and it's the Kabbalah star. And so the overlapping triangles represent the relations between the male and the female coming together. Okay, and so here is the description. If you ever see this in your research, this is their way of saying that God and man was male and female all at once. She is he, or he is she, and she is him. And the light of Shekinah is the true light of all truths. And so that star also to them represents the Shekinah star. With the male and female overlapping, it's their god Mercury with the goddess Venus. Okay, so this is what the whole transgender movement is about. They are trying to put humanity and their god, male and female, back together into the image of their androgynous god, which is embodied in the Baphomet, which goes back to the goat god Pan/Saturn. So this now brings us to the 18th century, where we will look at this man, Jacob Frank, and that is his picture in the upper right corner. He was Sabbatai Zevi's infamous successor, who took Zevi's teachings to a whole new level of evil. He did everything that Zevi did, and then way worse. So Jacob Frank was born in 1726 AD, and he was the son of a Polish Sabbatean. So Jacob Frank's father and those in their tight-knit community were followers and devotees of Sabbatai Zevi. Even after Zevi's death in 1676, the popularity of his debased teachings carried on long after he was gone from this earth. Jacob Frank grew up steeped with these teachings in his household, all around him. And by the time he was a young man, he was thoroughly convinced that he was the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi, as well as the biblical patriarch Jacob, who had been the progenitor of the 12 tribes of Israel. He created a new religion, which he called Frankism, based on the redemption through sin Sabbatean philosophy combined with the Lurianic Kabbalah. Jacob Frank took these two philosophies to all new depths of debauchery, what today we would refer to as Satanism, and which is practiced by all of the elite rulers of the world, including most of the Hollywood celebrities, recording artists, sports stars. You got to pay to play. The following excerpt is taken from Robert Seffer's book, 1666, Redemption Through Sin. Mr. Sepper said, the Frankists held annual springtime lamb festivals, and then I put in parentheses, this was most likely a mockery of the true Passover. And so the springtime lamb festivals consisted of a celebratory dinner that included drug use, sacrifice, nudity, and the exchanging of spouses and daughters for religious sex. He often slept with his followers as well as his own daughter, Eve Frank, whom he called the Lady or the Holy Matron. Eve Frank served as the central figure in the sex rituals of the sect while her father was still alive. After his death, she continued to run the sect in Offenbach, which is in the region of Hesse in Germany, and then later in Poland. Frank totally rejected the traditional interpretation of the Torah. He converted to both Islam and Catholicism, encouraging his followers to convert to Catholicism, or either one, when they came under fire as heretics by Jewish authorities. And he preached a doctrine that the best way to imitate God was to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, and mix the sacred with the profane. Okay, I showed this in the video last week in part 1, and I said perhaps the Frankist feasts resembled these below, hosted by Guy and Helene de Rothschild in December of 1972. And looking at the top middle picture, the lady in white with the mask on, I'm just wondering if that is supposed to be an interpretation of Baphomet. I don't know. Or if she's just dressed up like a stag. I don't know. But you can see from these pictures, especially the table decorations, that these are some pretty sick, dark individuals. For Jacob Frank, the central theological point was the mixing of the holy with the unholy. In his pseudo-Gnostic perspective, the holy evil world was a creation not of Yahweh, but of an evil creator God. And these are not my words. These are Robert Seffer's words. I don't believe the Most High is Yahweh. So anyway, it says the holy evil world was a creation not of Yahweh, but of an evil creator God. And yet God had become manifest and present in the world, thus transgressing the boundary between pure and impure. Human beings, according to Frank, to imitate God likewise must enter into the realm of the profane. At the height of his popularity, approximately 50,000 Jews, or Marrano and crypto Jews, considered themselves his disciples. Now, this was far less than Sabbatai Zevi, his messianic predecessor, who had over 20 times as many followers in the prior century. Despite the smaller following, Frank's cult would grow to include some of Europe's royalty, nobility, and richest bankers. And that was from Robert Seffer's book again. Okay. Goodness, struggling here. Wealthy bankers like Meyer Amschel Rothschild. Meyer Amschel Bauer, sorry, that was the family's correct name, was born in 1743 and died in 1812. And he was born in Frankfurt, Germany, the son of Moses Amschel Bauer, who was a Jewish moneylender and proprietor of a counting house in the Judengasse community within Frankfurt on Main. Meyer Amschel learned the trade from his father, but when he came of age, he left home and went to work for the Oppenheimer Bank in Hanover, Germany. He was very successful and became a junior partner. During the 12 years that Bauer worked for Oppenheimer, he became acquainted with General von Estorff. Following his father's death, Meyer Amschel Bauer returned to Frankfurt to take over his father's counting house business. For a reason known only to him, he changed the family surname to Rothschild, Roth being German for red, and Schild being German, for shield. Red shield, apparently inspired by the red shield hanging outside the door of his family's home. At some later point in time, General von Estorff, from Meyer's Oppenheimer days, contacted Meyer Rothschild, and von Estorff was now attached to the court of Prince William IX of Hesse-Hanau, one of the richest royal houses in Europe at that time. Now, there are two versions of the story. Number one, that Prince William was in need of a specific coin or rare item, and von Estorff contacted Rothschild in the hope that he could get it. Or the other storyline is Rothschild contacted von Estorff on the pretext of selling him valuable coins and trinkets at discounted prices, and offered his discreet services no matter how speculative or shady. Either way, von Estorff facilitated an introduction between Prince William of Hesse and Rothschild, and Prince William was more than pleased with what Rothschild had procured for him, but we don't exactly know what that was. So the picture on the left is M.D. Oppenheimer's. It's a portrait done by the Oppenheimer family of Meyer Amschel and the Elector of Hesse, Prince William. So Meyer Amschel subsequently became close associates with Prince William and became his go-to man, soon becoming a member of Prince William's court. In 1769, Prince William gave Rothschild permission to hang a sign on the front of his business premises declaring M.A. Rothschild by appointment court factor to His Serene Highness Prince William of Hanau. This opened the door to many more opportunities for Meyer Amschel. It is at this point in his career that Meyer realized loaning money to kings, queens, and governments was far more lucrative than selling coins to individuals, since the loans to royalty and governments were secured by that nation's taxes. Rothschild became so adept at this profession that it was not long before he became very wealthy. In 1770, Meyer Amschel married Gudel Schnapper, also an Ashkenazi Jew, daughter of merchant Wolf Salomon Schnapper. Their first son, Amschel Meyer, was born in 1773. Second son, Salomon Meyer, was born 1774. Third son, Nathan Meyer, was born 1776. Fourth son, Karl Meyer, was born in 1788. And their fifth son, Jacob, who went by the name of James Meyer, was born in 1792. Now, Meyer Amschel and Gödel actually had 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls, but of course Meyer cared most about their sons, as they were considered his 5 arrows, which he shot out of his quiver into the nations of England, Austria, France, and Italy, with eldest son Amschel Rothschild remaining in Germany to continue the legacy his father had built there. Meyer's daughters were not allowed to participate in the family business, but instead were used as matchmaking pawns to further the Rothschild line through advantageous marriages. It was not uncommon for nieces to marry their uncles or first and second cousins to marry in order to keep the Rothschild wealth and secrets in the family. There was much endogamy, and endogamy basically means marrying or reproducing only within the limits of a family, clan, or a community. So there was much endogamy in the Rothschild family, especially in those early years. They were not quite as bad as the Habsburgs, which was pretty severe. And then later on, I think they started branching out and intermarrying with other select families because there were a lot of issues that came up with mental instability and melancholy and different things. So it was not uncommon for nieces to marry their uncles or first and second cousins to marry. Okay, so for example, the youngest Rothschild son, Jacob/James, married his niece Betty, daughter of his older brother Solomon. There is a consensus among many of the Rothschild family researchers that of the 58 marriages contracted by the descendants of Meyer Amschel, at least 29 were between first cousins. And so I popped a little family tree in there. I mean, that is not it. That's not the totality of it, but this is the older generations, first, second, and third generations. I thought you guys might find that interesting. One more important discussion point regarding Rothschild's relationship with Prince William of Hesse-Hanau comes from researcher and author F. Tupper Saussy in his book Rulers of Evil. And he had this to say about the Jesuits' involvement with Rothschild and Prince William's business dealings. He says, Frederick II of Hesse was one of Europe's richest rulers. Born a Protestant, he subscribed to the Rosicrucian style of Freemasonry. Although Jesuits converted him to Roman Catholicism, he remained a Rosicrucian secretly. Much of Frederick's business was handled by his son Prince William, who was also a Rosicrucian Freemason. William's specialty was facilitating war. He drafted able-bodied male Hessians, outfitted and trained them for battle, and then sold them to his English cousin George, who used them to fight alongside his own redcoats. Every time a Hessian was killed, William received a reparation in the form of extra compensation. As casualties mounted, so did his profits, which he then loaned out at interest through his lending agent, Meyer Amschel Rothschild. And then this is continued. Mr. Saussy is continued on the next slide. Aware that the Rothschilds are an important Jewish family, he says, I looked them up in the Encyclopedia Judaica and discovered that they bear the title Guardians of the Vatican Treasury. The Vatican Treasury, of course, holds the imperial wealth of Rome. Imperial wealth grows in proportion to its victories in war. As the Jesuit empowerment Regimini Militantis Ecclesiae implies, the church at war is more necessary than the church at peace. In September 1769, Prince William appointed Meyer Amschel of nearby Frankfurt to transact some of his financial affairs in the capacity of crown agent. The appointment of Rothschild gave the Black Papacy absolute financial privacy and secrecy. Who would ever search a family of Orthodox Jews for the key to the wealth of the Roman Catholic Church? I used to have a online digital version of Mr. Saussy's book, Rulers of Evil. I'm going to go through as I edit this video, and if I can find it, I will put it in the video's description. In my YouTube video description, I will leave the link in there if I can find it. If it's not there, then it means that it's been removed. Because I don't delete these things. But if I can find it, I will put it in there for you guys. It is a very eye-opening read, and I think you will find a lot of really helpful information in there. Most people are aware that the Bauer Rothschilds were Jewish, at least outwardly. Remember what we learned last week is they have this duality. They appear on the outside to the outside world as one thing, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, but secretly their religion is Kabbalah. Okay, so with regards to their religious beliefs, however, make no mistake, they were Frankists, devout followers of Jacob Frank and his precepts. And Jacob Frank's religion was Satan worship. And just a little side note, this is who Meyer Amschel viewed as his rabbi, was Jacob Frank. In the book To Eliminate the Opiate, Volume 2, Rabbi Marvin S. Antelman explains just where Jacob Frank got his financing. He says Frankfurt at that time was the headquarters of the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, founder of the Illuminati. It was the Bavarian Illuminati back then, as well as Rothschild brothers' financial empire. This is worth repeating. Frankfurt was the birthplace of both the Illuminati and the Rothschild Empire. When Jacob Frank entered the city, the alliance between the two had already begun. Weishaupt provided the conspiratorial resources of the Jesuit order, while the Rothschilds contributed the money. What was missing was a means to spread the agenda of the Illuminati, and the Frankists added this with their network of agents throughout the Christian and Islamic worlds. Jacob Frank became instantly wealthy because he was given a nice handout by Meyer Amschel Rothschild of Frankfurt. So here's a little chart that I made to kind of show their relationship. I call it the unholy alliance. So on the left, you've got Jew, Frankist Jew, Meyer Amschel Rothschild. And then on the right, you've got Frankist Jesuit, Adam Weishaupt. And then you've got Frankist, the Frankist leader, Jacob Frank, who outwardly supposedly converted to Christianity and Islam. So, yeah. But the universal religion is, it just depends on what side of the bird. On the light side, it's Luciferianism, and on the dark side, it is Satanism. So this is a good place to introduce the man who would become Meyer Amschel's Illuminati partner in crime, Adam Weishaupt. Weishaupt also became an ardent follower of Jacob Frank. He had sexual relations with his sister-in-law, which resulted in her, I believe this was his wife's sister, which resulted in her becoming pregnant. He then paid for her to have an abortion. So it seems he was doing his part to become more holy through his debased and wretched actions. Now, Johann Adam Weishaupt was born on the 6th of February, 1748 in Ingolstadt, in the Electorate of Bavaria. Many researchers believe his family was actually of Jewish origin. And Weishaupt's father, Johann Georg Weishaupt, died when Adam was about somewhere between 5 to 7 years old. After his father's death, he came under the tutelage of his godfather, Johann Adam Führer von Eichstätt, who, like his father, was a professor of law at the University of Ingolstadt, which was a known Jesuit university. A cursory search on Wikipedia shows that Ingolstadt was indeed a Jesuit university. Wikipedia says, the Jesuit College of Ingolstadt was a Jesuit school in the Duchy and Electorate of Bavaria, founded in 1556, and it operated under the suppression of the Jesuit order in 1773. That operated until the suppression of the Jesuit order in 1773. The college was the headquarters of the Jesuits in Germany and became a center of the Counter-Reformation. Johann von Eichstätt was a proponent of the Enlightenment philosophy, and he greatly influenced young Adam with his rationalism. Weishaupt began his formal education at age 7 at a Jesuit school and later enrolled at the University of Ingolstadt, where he graduated in 1768 at the age of 20 with a doctorate of law. In 1772, he became a professor of law, a position that was held exclusively by the Jesuits until that time. Now, many academics would have us believe that Adam Weishaupt just changed his mind about being a Jesuit and simply walked away from his position. However, nothing could be further from the truth, as we will see. I apologize, I'm covering these words. History books tell us that on the 1st of May, so May 1st, 1776, Weishaupt founded the Illuminati in the Electorate of Bavaria. Initially, illumination was to be designated for a group of outstanding, enlightened individuals in the society. Indeed, the word was adapted from the Latin root illuminatus, which directly translates to enlightened. Let me put that back. According to author and anthropologist Robert Seffer in his book, Redemption Through Sin, he says, Weishaupt formed the Order of the Illuminati specifically on May 1st, 1776, because he believed in the timing of key events by arranging numbers according to the Kabbalah, which would add to numbers of greatest occult significance. For example, May, being the 5th month, added to the first day 1 equals 6, and the year 1776 adds up to 21. 1 plus 7 plus 7 plus 6 equals 21. In addition, 6, which is 5 plus 1, equals 27. Another number with occult power. Once again, we see gematria being employed in the timing of a key event. This is also how they came about the date for the American Revolution, FYI. What the history books failed to mention is that Weishaupt formed the Illuminati on the orders of his Jesuit superior general, Black Pope Lorenzo Ricci, and that is a picture of Ricci on the right. Weishaupt became the public face of the Illuminati, which allowed Mayor Amschel to stay hidden in the shadows, running financial operations from behind the scenes. He also reported to the Black Pope, meaning Amschel Rothschild also reported to the Black Pope, Lorenzo Ricci. We can speculate that Ricci connected Weishaupt and Rothschild for this very endeavor. Author Eric John Phelps has this to say regarding Weishaupt in his book, Vatican Assassins, the 3rd edition. Mr. Phelps says, during the Jesuit order suppression from 1773 to 1814, done by Pope Clement XIV, Superior General Ricci created the Order of the Illuminati with his soldiers. Adam Weishaupt, uniting the House of Rothschild and the Grand Orient Freemasonry with the Society of Jesus. Although Ricci would die a prisoner in Rome's Castle of St. Angelo, his satanic master plan of vengeance against the monarchs of Europe and the war on the papacy's Holy Roman Empire would be crowned with success. Weishaupt, the father of modern communism, used his Jesuit-backed Jacobins to conduct the terrifying French Revolution, incited by Masonic encyclopedists Voltaire and Diderot. Years later, Jesuit General Ladochsky, with his Bolsheviks, conducted the Russian Revolution in 1917, incited by his Masonic communists, Marx and Engels, it being identical to the upheaval of 1789. What many modern writers of today describe as the Illuminati is, in fact and purpose, another name for the ubiquitous Company of Jesus, under the all-pervading guidance of its master governing Washington, D.C., London, Paris, Berlin, Moscow, Peking, Jerusalem, Mecca, and the Vatican, the Black Pope. So there, he's saying that the Black Pope is the all-pervading guidance of all of those nations. It needs to be acknowledged that the Freemasonry groups throughout Europe and America were secretly governed by whomever held the position of Superior General in the Jesuit order during a given time period. So while the members of these various Protestant Freemason lodges believed themselves to be operating in secret and pulling one over on the Vatican, they thought they were being so secretive and sneaky and, sticking it to the Vatican, they were sorely mistaken. Author F. Tupper Saussy states the following regarding this. He says, the Protestant Inquisition's effect, of course, was to send the more resourceful of the heretics, the Protestants and liberals, of course, who escaped torture or execution from the Vatican, by scurrying underground or into the burgeoning world of commerce or into regions where Protestant civil authorities kept inquisitors at bay. Yearning for a less intrusive religious experience, they joined attractive philosophical fraternities where they could speak freely against Roman Catholicism. For this ostensible reason, these fraternities or cults or lodges operated in secrecy. In fact, they were the remnants of the Templars network, which was made up of the Rosicrucians, the Teutonic Knights, and the numerous and various rites of Freemasonry. Like the Templars and the Jesuits, they were religious hierarchies of strict obedience. They differed from the Jesuits, however, in that their pyramid culminated in an ultimate authority that no brother could identify with certainty. The highest master of a lodge received commandments from an unknown superior, a superior whose will the master's whole struggle up the degrees had trained him to obey without question. What the masters never realized was that this mysterious person, as we shall examine in more detail later, was none other than the Black Pope. So here you've got all of these these Protestant Freemasons who think they're being sneaky. They're secretly joining these brotherhood fraternities. As they're working through the degrees, they have to, it's always obeying the unknown superior, not realizing that they've been snared because the unknown superior is the Jesuit Black Superior General, the Black Pope. So that was always hidden from them. Tupper Saussy continues, The leading Jesuit bashers were not only Freemasons, they were unknowingly the product of Jesuit learning against learning. This is called the Ratio Studiorum, the Medici Library's Gnostic wisdom absorbed in an ambiance of casuistry, equivocation, mental reservation, and obedience of the understanding, combined with smatterings of Holy Scripture, usually filtered through the commentaries of church doctors, that had turned 2 centuries of Jesuited students into secular philosophers. The Ratio Studiorum dictated the form and scope of the Medici Encyclopedia, which in turn codified the Enlightenment paradigm whose deistic litany was preached around the altars of Freemasonry. If you hold Freemasonry up to the light, you cannot help but see the black papacy's watermark. Freemasons would not suspect this, nor would the Jesuits. It would be information reserved uniquely to the unknown superior who shared what he knows with no one. Freemasonry was the natural, the reasonable, and the only intelligent way for the Roman Catholic Church to control A, the ongoing affront of Protestantism, which they viewed as a heresy, and B, the increase in divine right to rule kings heading their own national churches independent of Vatican control, and C, the incredible explosion of international mercantilism. Like the aquatic creature whose mouth resembles a comfortable resting place to its prey, the lodges were a sagacious recycling of the old Templar infrastructure into a dynamic spiritual and economic brotherhood that gave Protestants, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, agnostics, and anyone else an opportunity to build a better life outside of Roman Catholicism, yet still under the Church's superintending eye. For Sun Tzu says, "The general sees all, hears all, does all, and in appearance is not involved with anything." The Jesuit general is the disembodied I, substituting for the pyramid's missing capstone, the stone the builders rejected. The lodge's secrecy and its condemnation by the Church were essential to sustaining the integrity of both institutions. And so the deepest Masonic secret, the secret that not even the grandest Freemason master could penetrate, was that all their secrets were known to one man alone, this being the superior general of the Society of Jesus, aka the Black Pope, the superior general. As stated earlier, Meyer Amschel stayed in the shadows and out of public view, delegating orders to his many secret agents and public puppets. He secretly, and Adam Weishaupt publicly, infiltrated the French Oriental Masonic Brotherhood and began to interweave their Illuminati tenets to those they considered adepts. To the uninitiated, they cloaked the true nature of their work, disguising it as philanthropy. They used their influence within the lodges to spread their atheistic, materialistic ideology among those that they referred to as the Goyim, the Gentile cattle. But always their ultimate goal, behind all of the deceptive, high-sounding phrases and popular slogans, was the ultimate takeover of every world government, the abolishing of every religion, especially the Christians, whom Rothschild hated with a passion. The long-term political goals of their occult secret society called for the execution of the following plan: the abolishing of all monarchies and all ordered governments, the abolishing of private property and inheritances, the abolishing of patriotism and nationalism, the abolishing of family life and the institute of marriage, the establishment of communal education for children, aka state education, and the abolishing of all religion. Okay, and of course these line right up with what we talked about 2 or 3 videos ago with the Committee of 300, right? And that's who they work for. Now, Robert Seffer stated the following in his book. He said Mayor Rothschild summoned 12 affluent men to Frankfurt and asked them to pool their financial resources. He then presented the 25-point plan, their manifesto, that would enable them to gain control of the wealth, natural resources, and manpower of the entire world. This plan included instructions on how to preach liberalism in order to usurp political power, initiate class warfare, dismantle and reconstruct all existing institutions, and remain invisible until the very moment when the Illuminati had gained such strength that no cunning or force could undermine it. Other highlights of their plan included the use of mob psychology to control the masses. They would systematically advocate and use alcoholic liquors, drugs, moral corruption, and all forms of vice to corrupt the youth. In addition, they planned to use the press for propaganda to control all outlets of public information while remaining in the shadows, clear of blame. The plan called for the masses to be made to believe that they had been the prey of criminals, and then the Illuminati, or the shadow government, would restore order and appear as the saviors. This plan falls right in line with what is termed Hegelian dialectics, which is to create a problem. The masses will predictably react and cry out to be saved, and then they swoop in with the solution, their solution, and appear to be the saviors, all the while hiding the fact that they masterminded the whole process from the beginning. So on the left side, we have, I have a picture of Mayor Amschel's 5 sons, Nathan, James Amschel Sr., Solomon, and Carl, and what regions that they were over, or what nations they were over. The interests of the Rothschild sons became international finance and banking. They established branch offices in the major capitals of Europe. Son Nathan was positioned in the city of London. Okay, so in that position, London, it's that little independent small section, the city of London, that is autonomous, kind of like the Vatican in Washington, D.C. And that position in England, they still are crown agents. Okay, so it said Nathan, it was in the city of London, son Carl in Naples, son Solomon was positioned in Vienna, youngest son Jacob, who goes by James, was positioned in Paris, and then of course the oldest son Anselm Meyer was positioned in Frankfurt, having taken over his father's operations. There. In a relatively short period of time, the Rothschilds were able to bring all of Europe under their influence. They bought officials and made themselves indispensable to the monarchs and princes of Europe, mainly by providing large loans to finance their various war campaigns against one another. It took only one generation of planning, intrigue, and manipulation of public opinion to make the Rothschild brothers the greatest force and influence, not only in the affairs of Europe, but also in the Far East and then later the United States. Okay, by the Far East, I want to say, I believe that they were over in China as of at least by 1830. Maybe a little bit earlier than that, and definitely had their hands in with all the opium and everything else going on over there. By 1815, Austria led the way by granting the 5 brothers the hereditary title of Baron, with land ownership to go with it. And so here, the top picture is Nathan Rothschild, and he says, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply." And he was quoted as saying that. And then the picture underneath, of course, is Evelyn de Rothschild, and he's got his finger pointed, right in Prince Charles' chest. So that tells you right there that in whatever capacity they are over even the royal families. Okay, and of course here, this is Lord Jacob Rothschild of the English branch. He says, "Hello, I am Lord Jacob Rothschild." Of course, he didn't say this about himself, but it's a meme. "You don't know me, but I am the most powerful man in the world and head of the Rothschild banking clan. We own your Federal Reserve, media, government, political parties, and money. For over 200 years, we have funded both sides of every war. My family has a net worth of $500 trillion. Every dollar produced is an IOU to my family, and the entire planet owes us a debt that they can't pay back. We own nearly every central bank in the world. Before 9/11, 7 countries did not have a central bank under our control or rule. Now there are 3 left to invade: Iran, North Korea, and Cuba. So get back to work, slave." Okay, and that's even though he didn't necessarily say that, it's exactly how they feel, how they think, and all that information is true. And so over here to the left, where I've got the Rothschild Private Banking and Trust and their crest, it says, "In the year 2000, there were 8 countries without a Rothschild-owned central bank. At that time, they were Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, Syria, and Iran. Now there are only 4 left. And according to the one on the left, now we're down to 3. Do you see a pattern here? Okay, so here is another picture of the Rothschilds. That is, I believe that's Evelyn de Rothschild and his wife. And then I'm not sure who the other Rothschild is. And then you can see the Queen of England. So looks like they're all quite chummy. Yes. Oh, Evelyn's wife is Lynn. So the lady on the left is Lynn de Rothschild, Lynn de Rothschild, and she is Evelyn de Rothschild's wife. And Evelyn, I know it's a female name, but it's the man standing next to Hillary. And so you can see that the Rothschilds are quite chummy with the Clintons, and I would wager to bet they're all swingers in the Franca style, if you get my drift. Now, this lady, I don't know. It says Baron Philippe de Rothschild, but this is a lady, so I don't know what her name is. But you can clearly see, first of all, she's a little creepy, slightly creepy. And then she looks like her favorite necklace she loves to wear, because she's got it on in almost every one of these pictures, is the satanic goat ram necklace, which is symbolic of the Baphomet as well. And let's see where else we've seen that. Okay, so in the center, here's a picture of the Baphomet, right? And then to the bottom left, those necklaces that she was wearing. And then to the right, the upper right corner, this is the emblem on the, I believe it's the, I don't know if it's Dodge Ram or if it's Chevy Ram. I don't know. I think it's Chevy. And I'm telling you what, it creeps me out. And if you look where I've got the red arrow pointed, I took this picture. I was at a red light, and there was this truck in front of me, and I don't know why, but I always seem to find myself either behind a Tesla or this Ram, the Ram truck. I don't know why. And when the sunlight hits it a certain way, it makes the eyes glow. And so it's just a wee bit creepy to see the glowing eyes. but it's the same icon. And then of course, in the bottom right corner is the Fordham University logo, and Fordham is Jesuit college or university. And interesting, they also have the goat ram head logo. Now I think that is a little bit older, because if you go on their website today, they have changed that. So, but yeah, it definitely was in use for some time. Okay, well, we also have a dangerous alliance of the Rothschilds with the Vatican, the Unholy See. But that shouldn't surprise us, because again, as F. Tupper Saussy told us, the Rothschilds are the Vatican agents of the money. Again, and I showed this on one of my other videos a little while ago, but it's still quite peculiar. We've got Pope Francis kissing the hands of both a Rothschild and a Rockefeller. So again, you can see not only is the royal family subject to them, but so are the popes. Or maybe just at least the white pope. I'm not sure on that. So, okay, I have something a little interesting to share with you. So, a document, I want to say back in 2022, I was just doing some searching, probably searching the Illuminati. And I tend to, if I'm researching, taboo topics, for example, I most always will use DuckDuckGo. And I use it through the app. I don't use it through the browser, because I don't trust Google to give me the answer I'm looking for, because they'll bury it. And so I've done all the research that I have found I've used through the DuckDuckGo app. And so, as I said, I think I was researching Illuminati, and then this document popped up. I found a server, and it was at www.bankindex.com. And the message that was on there, it said, excuse me, it said the document came in, or this document came in through one of the bank index forms. The author leaving an unusable email. This was like the little message that was on the webpage. Says the author leaving an unusable email address so as not to be tracked. Those who saw the document are not quite sure how to verify it. Is it authentic? Did the person who leaked it want to perhaps unburden themselves? Maybe wanting to warn what they had found out, or maybe had been a part of and had regrets. For now, those questions go unanswered. Okay, and then I put, however, knowing now what we've learned about the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Bilderbergers, etc., after the Great Awakening, which began in 2020, who can deny the truth of what the secret covenant reveals? Read for yourself and make up your own mind. As the document is quite lengthy, here are just a few chilling excerpts that I compiled. Now, I put at the bottom an author's note. I can personally attest, in 2022, I pulled this document off of that website, the one at the top. However, it did not stay up for long, and the server has been wiped and no longer found. If you type that in, it'll say the server no longer exists. But I saw it with my own eyes, and I took, it's a very long document, so I just kind of pulled out what I thought was kind of the most chilling, and things that we could definitely verify. And the document was entitled The Secret Covenant of the Illuminati. An illusion it will be so large, so vast, it will escape their perception. Now, this is them talking. This is the Illuminati's secret covenant, allegedly. Those who see it will be thought of as insane. And so whenever you see like the brackets next to something, that's my interjecting, okay? Yes, and so the people thought of as insane are all of us who've been called conspiracy theorists, especially before the Great Awakening, right? We will create separate fronts to prevent them from seeing the connection between us. We will behave as if we are not connected to keep the illusion alive. Our goal will be accomplished one drop at a time so as to never bring suspicion upon ourselves. This will also prevent them from seeing the changes as they occur. We will work together always and will remain bound by blood and secrecy. Death will come to he who speaks. We will keep their lifespan short and their minds weak, while pretending to do the opposite. We will use soft metals, aging accelerators, and sedatives in their food and water, and also in the air. The soft metals will cause them to lose their minds. We will promise to find a cure from our many fronts, yet we will just feed them more poison. So again, you're sick, you go to the doctor, they prescribe a medication, a pharmacia, right? And then usually you end up having to come back and get something else from the side effects of that pharmacia, right? Because they all have side effects. So they said, we'll just feed them more poison. They're going to feed us more poison when we come in for help. They will be blanketed by poisons everywhere they turn. The poisons will be absorbed through their skin and mouths. They will destroy their minds and reproductive systems. From all of this, their children will be born dead, and we will conceal the information. When they give birth, we will inject poisons into the blood of their children and convince them that it's for their own good. Childhood vaccinations, people. It's what they're for. Their minds will belong to us, and they will do as we say. If they refuse, we shall find ways to implement mind-altering technology into their lives. We will use fear as our weapon. We will establish their governments and establish opposites within. We will own both sides. We will make them kill each other when it suits us. We will focus their attention towards money and material goods so they may never connect with their inner self, meaning our spiritual selves, right? We will distract them with fornication, external pleasures, and games so that they may never be one with the oneness of it all. We will always hide our objective, but carry out our plan. They will perform the labor for us, and we shall prosper from their toil. Our families will never mix with theirs. Our blood must be pure always, for it is the way. We will keep them separated from the oneness by dogma and religion. We will control all aspects of their lives and tell them what to think and how. We will use our media to control the flow of information and their sentiment in our favor. When they shall rise up against us, we will crush them like insects, for they are less than that. They will be helpless to do anything, for they will have no weapons. Because remember, that's part of their plan, is to take away all of our weapons. We will recruit some of their own to carry out our plans. We will promise them eternal life, but eternal life they will never have, for they are not of us. The recruits will be called initiates and will be indoctrinated to believe false rites of passage to higher realms. Members of these groups will think that they are one with us, never knowing the truth. They must never learn the truth, for then they will turn against us. Okay, that's what the Freemasons, that's what all of the brotherhoods are for, right? They will never reach the higher realms, for the killing of their own kind will prevent passage to the realm of enlightenment. They will never know. This is the secret covenant by which we shall live the rest of our This is the secret covenant by which we shall live the rest of our present and future lives. For this reality will transcend many generations and lifespans. This covenant is sealed by blood, our blood. We, the ones who from heaven to earth came. That's very chilling. And again, like I said, there was a lot more. These were just the more succinct, more things that you can look at and see as true. So their quote, "Those they look to will help. We will enlist them to push our poisons." Sounds like they are talking about their doctors, most likely strategically placed throughout all hospitals and clinics everywhere. These doctors are instructed to push their poisons, aka vaccines, injecting them into the blood of our children from birth, all the while convincing the parents that is for the benefit of the child. And then, when there are adverse reactions, like autism, speech regression, autoimmune disorders, they deny, reassess, and put the blame elsewhere. And I will interject here that they are immune. All the pharmaceutical companies are immune. You cannot sue them for vaccine injury. Okay? So they're quite insulated. And this is what I said now. Throughout my childhood, I'm 56 years young. Throughout my entire childhood, from birth to 18, I was given 6 vaccines, and they were single vaccines, not these double and triple doses that they do. Now, children of present day will have been given approximately 72 doses from the time of their birth to the time they turn 18 years old. And ask me how I know that. Because I fought the pediatricians when my children were younger, because I felt very, very strongly in my spirit that I was not to vaccinate my children. And this was, 20 plus years ago, when it wasn't really being talked about like it is now. It was just a very a knowing, I know, just a deep knowing that I was not to do that. And so every time I had to take them for a well check appointment, I would say, no, we don't vaccinate. And I would go round and round with the pediatrician, and I would say, why are you having to give these children 72 doses? Because I had done my research. And he kind of looked at me flustered, because I don't think he's probably not used to most parents pushing back, and let alone having parents who've done research on it. And so he got kind of flustered, and he said, well, because they don't always work. And I said, well, then why are you administering them if they don't always work? So then he got more flustered and started to get angry. And he's like, well, it's herd mentality, it's herd immunity. He said, if you vaccinate enough of the children, then it will cover the ones that it doesn't work on. And so that's one of the biggest arguments the doctors give for pushing the vaccines, is the quote, vaccinating children helps create herd immunity. Now, I never really questioned that until lately as I was putting this together, and I thought, isn't the term herd interesting that they're using it with regards to the children? Herd is something you would use when you're talking about cattle, isn't it? So again, I don't know that many of these doctors really understand why they're taught that language, but it's because, as we discovered learning about the Committee of 300, they view us as cattle. That's what goyim are. They are. They call us the useless eaters. We are the Gentile cattle, and so. But it just blusters. They don't always work. If they worked, why would they be giving 72 doses? They don't. It's poison. In 2023, a man named Steve Kirsch testified before the Pennsylvania State Senate regarding vaccines. He stated that there are long-term studies of the Amish communities, showing that there are rarely, if any, cases of autism, ADD, autoimmune disease, pans, epilepsy, etc., in their communities. Mr. Kirsch stated, the U.S. government has been secretly studying the Amish for decades, yet there has never been one report to the public documenting those studies. He said the reason for this is because it would show the truth, that if people refused to follow the CDC guidelines, they would be healthier. He stated that's why there is no report after decades of studying the Amish, because any report would be devastating to the narrative and would show that the CDC has been harming the public for decades and bearing all the data. And then I gave a link to the article on the Gateway Pundit website. And then over here, I took some screenshots of it. So this article the author is Jim Hoft. It was done on June 29th, 2023. And the title says, Steve Kirsch during Pennsylvania State Senate hearing, we can't find an autistic kid who was unvaccinated within the Amish community, meaning they don't vaccinate. And when they looked at all of them, there are no autistic children. Okay. And even among the rest of us that don't vaccinate, you are hard pressed to find, rarely, if at all, but I won't say, because I don't know for sure, but I'll say rarely, even with the rest of us that are non-Amish that don't vaccinate, rarely will you find an autistic child. So it says, in a recent Pennsylvania State Senate hearing on June 9th, 2023, Silicon Valley philanthropist and technology entrepreneur Steve Kirsch posed a serious challenge to long-held beliefs on vaccinations and their impact on public health. During his testimony, he made a remarkable assertion. He said, we cannot find an autistic kid who is unvaccinated. The tech entrepreneur criticized the CDC for not conducting a comprehensive study comparing the health of fully vaccinated and fully unvaccinated individuals, comparing them. Even though former CDC Director Judy Gerberding had promised to initiate such a study in 2005, 20 years ago. In 2005, CDC Director Judy Gerberding promised to do such a study. She said, yes, we should do such a study. It's important that we do a study now, and then we can refine it later. Well, that was nearly 20 years ago, said Kirsch. The tech entrepreneur criticized the CDC. Looks like I put that twice, sorry. He said that study, Mr. Kirsch said, that study has never been done. And it will never be done because they don't want people to know that all of these vaccines have been harming people since the very beginning. There is no safe vaccine, not a single one. Not one vaccine is safe and effective. And he says, I actually went on Twitter and I offered $2,500 to anybody who could show me such a study, and nobody was able to produce such a study, he added. I have to say I concur. Now, this next article I pulled off, I found a few years ago when researching Bill and Melinda Gates. This popped up, and it says Annual Survey of International and Comparative Law. And the article is from 2017, titled Accountability of International NGOs, Human Rights Violations in Healthcare Provision in Developing Countries and the Effectiveness of Current Measures. And then it just gives further information below. And the abstract says, in recent years, the number of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, working in the international arena has vastly increased, generally making a positive impact. But as this influence has deepened, governments in the developing world and scholars have scrutinized the work and accountability of NGOs, given they are mostly independent and not subjected to international law. While NGOs must adhere to the domestic laws of the places within which they work, adherence is dependent upon the strength of enforcement of those laws. Proponents argue that this independence is essential for NGOs to effectively carry out their work. However, a review of healthcare programs funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation calls into question current accountability measures of NGOs in the healthcare sector and can shine a light on weaknesses and potential areas of improvement in the current accountability regime. The Gates Foundation focuses on world health and population and highlights its strategy of accelerating scientific discovery with reducing costs. But since the early 2000s, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations, Global Health Innovative Technology Fund, and PATH, whatever that stands for, all heavily funded by the Gates Foundation, have been distributing vaccines and drugs to vulnerable populations in Africa and India. In 2010, the Gates Foundation funded experimental malaria and meningitis vaccine trials across Africa and HPV vaccine programs in India. All of these programs resulted in numerous deaths and injuries, with accounts of forced vaccinations and uninformed consent, meaning they were doing it without parental consent or without the consent of the persons. So, and one thing I want to add to this is that in Africa, specifically with the HPV, of the girls that survived that, many of them, as time has gone on, have found themselves to be sterile. They cannot get pregnant. And then also in India, because they did the same thing in Africa, and then in India, they also rolled out a polio vaccine, and hundreds died from that. And the ones that survived are crippled and cannot walk. So, yeah. And I want to say this is by design. And I also meant to say, when I first started talking about vaccines, I think the first vaccines came out in, I want to say like the 1950s. Might have been earlier than that. And I think it was around the issue of polio. But when I looked into this, here's the interesting thing. Polio, when those vaccines came out, was already on the decline. It had already wiped itself out or had already run its race. So there was no need for those polio vaccines. Okay, so, and that crippled some as well. It's evil. What we are looking at here, and the Gates Foundation knows exactly what they're doing. There's a reason that they're trying to kill off people in these third world countries and or sterilize them. And this is all part of their eugenics program. Okay, this is history repeating itself. So here's a picture of Bill Gates on the left, and then it says vaccine depopulation going to plan ? And then I blew up that I made bigger that smaller section. It says, my grandfather's brother, Frederick Gates, will be proud of me. He was the Rockefeller Foundation financial advisor and involved in the 1918 Spanish flu, experimental vaccine rollout that killed millions of vaccinated people. Okay, we have a long history, way before COVID. Okay, this has been going on for a very long time, and it's all part of eugenics. Now, I think about 3 years ago, I happened to come across this like little newspaper thing online, and it's called the Irish Light, and I was just kind of stunned. It's obviously an independent publication, and it says Pfizer knew their vaccine would kill. And so if you want to take a screenshot of that and try to make it bigger and read it, or maybe go and try and find it online. It just says leaked data shows shocking number of fatalities and side effects now officially associated with the COVID shots. I didn't remember to pull up the statistics, and I didn't want to get caught in the weeds because this is already a long video, but I'm just going to say that the number of babies of mothers that lost babies in utero after taking the COVID shot is in the thousands. Heartbreaking. These were normal pregnancies. Nothing had gone wrong. And all these women that took it, many of them, it caused their bodies to abort the babies. It's so evil. Now, I found this little thing from 1892. It's from December 1892. It's a do not vaccinate poster, and the vaccination is the serpent. Isn't that poetic? It's a do not vaccinate cartoon. It says even back then they knew it was poison. 1892. And here we are, 2025, and these charlatans, these doctors, okay, I will give the benefit of the doubt. Some of them are very good people. It's like the pastors going through the Jesuit seminaries, right? You've got good pastors out there that just want to be shepherds. They want to be pastors. And then they're told they have to go through the Jesuit seminaries, right? Same with the doctors. You've got bad doctors that are in the system and know what they're doing. And then you've got good people who just want to help people, right? Through medicine, but they go through the same, it's the training they have to go through, which is programming. And they're pushing the vaccines, right? So here we are, 2025. And parents are still being told, this will save your child's life. And I just will say real quick, I never vaccinated my children, and they had the strongest immunity. They very rarely ever got sick. When they did get most of the time, if they did get sick, it was when I took them in for well checks. They'd end up getting sick. But if they caught, just a little cold or something, I use therapeutic grade essential oils. I use herbs, teas, tinctures. I use homeopathic, natural things. I have an herb garden. I dry my herbs. Like, I can treat that. And very, very strong immune systems. Very rarely ever sick. And yet I had my mom friends that were vaccinating their children, and they were always, at least once a month, in the doctor's office for ear infections or strep or you name it, and then being given antibiotics, which kill off all of the good bacteria in the system, as well as whatever the bad bacteria is. And then you've got a yeast overgrowth issue. It messes up with the whole gut biome. And so it's insidious. But here we sit, 2025, and we still have doctors pushing this vaccine narrative to parents. And then when the child, perfectly normal child, and that MMR one that they get seems to be a doozy. I've met several people who've had their child speech regressed, or they became like zombies after whatever the one is that's around 18 months to 2 years. So anyway, moving on. Okay, now I found this. I like to peruse old newspapers, and sometimes I'll use my newspapers.com subscription. Sometimes I'll go into the Library of Congress. And so this actually was sent to me from a friend of mine. And so I went in to get the article, and it's from the Houston Daily Post, September 20th, 1897. And the whole, I want to say, I think it's page 2 of that newspaper was all about a yellow fever outbreak that they were having. Now, it was mild. It wasn't as bad. They kept comparing it. The one doctor that we'll hear about in here, he kept talking about it's not as bad as the one in 1876. That one was really bad. It's not as bad as that. It's mild. But yet, listen to their response. So it says Jackson, Mississippi, September 19th, 1897. Dr. H. Gettings of the Marine Hospital Service arrived here today on his way to Edwards to establish a camp of refuge. He has with him 300 tents and mattresses. It says Dr. Hunter of the State Board of Health will arrive here tomorrow morning from Vicksburg to confer with Dr. Gettings with a view to establishing a base of supplies and taking stringent measures to stamp out the scourge. Marlin, Texas, September 18th. It says Marlin has established quarantine precautions, and all parties wishing to enter the gates of the Little Health Resort must prove to the satisfaction of the officers on guard that they are not from any infected district. And it says today's features: yellow fever. Dr. Gettings of the Marine Hospital arrived at Jackson to establish a camp of detention. 1 death and 6 new cases are reported from New Orleans. 1 death and 11 new cases are reported from Mobile, Alabama. 2 cases from Cairo, Illinois were declared to be yellow fever. Mayor Rice has issued a notice announcing malicious false reports of fever in Texas. He says Dr. Swearingen gives warning of shipment of freight from New Orleans via St. Louis to Texas and asks cooperation in preventing traffic. Now, I thought this was interesting. House Surgeon Bloom has had a conference with President Oliphant today relative to the establishment of a place in which yellow fever patients might be moved. There are usually 700 or 800 patients in the charity hospital, and it is considered highly dangerous to receive yellow fever patients in that institution. Dr. Bloom said the hospital was ready to go to any expense to provide a supplementary hospital, a different location. At this conference, Dr. Beard submitted an offer of the free use of the smallpox detention camp, which is entirely disconnected from the smallpox hospital. So apparently, they had another location set up when there was a smallpox epidemic. And so this Dr. Beard is saying, hey, you can use the old smallpox detention camp. Which isn't, and it says, seems likely the offer will be accepted, and yellow fever patients who for various reasons cannot be treated at home will be sent to Dr. Beard's office. There are now 2 patients suffering with yellow fever in the charity hospital, and their presence, although they occupy isolated apartments, is deemed a serious menace to other patients. Those who are not immune will have to stay in the camp 10 days, according to the rules laid down by Surgeon Murray. These rules being simply the federal law, which the surgeon, as the commander of the camp, is bound to enforce. So it's not just even up to the local places, right? Now they're saying this is federal law. There were no new cases reported at Ocean Springs, but the weather was heavy and sultry, and one of the patients was not expected to live. And then they give the names. Charles Ziegler, son of a prominent New Orleans people, was among those stricken yesterday at Ocean Springs, but his condition is not considered serious. When the fever had been declared an epidemic and when it was declared an epidemic and determined that it was yellow fever, he closed himself up at home and did not venture forth except to go to the detention camp as soon as it was ready. Isolation, however, did not prevent the germs from entering his home. So now we've got germs that, even though he's quarantining at home, hasn't been around anybody else, right? The germs entered his home like burglars. They just came in uninvited. I thought this was, let's see if it hits you the same way it hits me. When the source or cause of yellow fever was mentioned, Dr. Stewart said, "Most everyone knows that yellow fever is a foreign disease. It does not belong in this country, but was imported from India and other foreign tropical countries. It is very contagious. The fact that it's very contagious is beyond question. It is taught, and we know from observation, that when a case of yellow fever appears in a community, it is like throwing a sack of indigo into a tub of water. If we had one case in Houston and the conditions were favorable for its propagation, it would be but a short time until almost every man, woman, and child in the city would be sick." So there's just so many things about this that remind me of our COVID epidemic, right? I mean, I think we probably could ask our friends, if anybody's from Australia, about the detention camps, the health detention camps that were set up for people there. That went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was almost like Hotel California, where you can check in if you like, but it seems like you're never going to be able to leave, right? And people were threatened if they tried to leave. So, and then didn't our COVID come from a different country? Yeah, it was it Wuhan, wasn't it? It was in China. So apparently they all come from other countries. Same narrative still going. And the federal government in charge. Isn't that interesting? So I have a question for you. What if viruses are not actually germs, but what if they're programmed codes and released by typing codes? I'm not saying that this is for sure the case, but what if? Because that's the first thing I thought when I found these pages, right? Surgical, for example, the one on the left is a little hard to read, but the one on the right, chapter 22, surgical diseases. Then you've got a list of diseases, and they have numbers next to them. And then same with these over here. So why do these have numbers assigned next to them? So one has to wonder if, because no one has been, I want to say, I think it was in the 1800s when the germ theory came out. But I have had more than one person, I've heard more than one person talk about that there is no proof of a germ theory or of a virus, of there being, I'm sure there are germs, but of there being viruses. I don't know if that's true or not. I am not a doctor, I'm not a medical person, but I find these very strange and alarming. Why are there like codes next to the disease? So I think we have to put a question mark on that and look further, because what if it's their codes typed into some quantum computer they keep saying that they have and releases these things? I mean, come on. Look at what they do with the weather. The technology that these people have is so far advanced than what we can even comprehend. They are able to do cloud seeding to make it rain, or to make just whip up hurricanes or tornadoes. They have direct energy weapons that can completely burn through metal and stone. They've got HARP technology. I mean, I don't know that it's that far-fetched. I think this is something we definitely need to question. And if any of you know more about this, please drop comments. Drop your what you know into the comments section for us. Now, Dr. Bradstreet said vaccines cause autism. Then the FDA raids his office, and he's found dead in the river 2 days later, June 15th, 2015. Okay, these are the early forerunners, and I want to make mention of them, and I want to put them out there, because these are people who lost their life in trying to tell the truth. Okay. Canadian physician and researcher Dr. Andrew Molden provided clear scientific evidence to prove that every dose of vaccine given to a child or an adult produces harm. The truth he uncovered was rejected by the conventional medical system and the pharmaceutical industry. Shocker. Nevertheless, his warning and his message to America remains as a solid legacy of the man who stood up against Big Pharma and their program to vaccinate every person on earth. Dr. Molden stated, "What we have done to each other with vaccines has produced the most profound damage to humankind by humankind in the history of humanity. And the reason why we got here is partly because, number one, our arrogance in thinking that we know everything. In physiology and medicine, we do not know everything. Number two, our greed to advance our own self-interest, to make money, to sell products and to advance corporate alliances. Commercialization has overtaken the fundamental human value of do unto others as you would have others do unto you." Which, right, and think about it, that's the Hippocratic oath that these doctors have to take. First, do no harm. In October 2013, Dr. Molden had told a small number of trusted colleagues that he was about to quote unquote, break his silence and would be releasing new information that would be a major challenge to the vaccine business of Big Pharma. Dr. Molden died unexpectedly in November of 2013, so just 1 month later, at 49 years of age. Professor Emeritus Garth Nicholson, PhD, is the President, Chief Scientific Officer, and Research Professor of Molecular Pathology at the Institute for Molecular Medicine in Huntington Beach, California. He has taught in medical schools in the U.S. and Australia, and he is one of the most often cited scientists in America today. Dr. Nicholson was part of a research team that became aware of biological warfare testing that was done on prisoners in Texas. The biological warfare agents later showed up in vaccines that were given to U.S. service personnel during the Persian Gulf Wars. The result was thousands of cases of Gulf War syndrome and vaccine-related deaths. He explained what happened to him when he and others learned about the Texas prison experiments and the vaccine damage that occurred among U.S. troops in the Gulf War. He stated, "We were actually forced to leave Texas. I was an endowed full professor and department chair at the University of Texas, and I literally had to leave Texas because it became too dangerous. Several of my colleagues died. My boss was shot in the back of the head in his office because he was going to blow the whistle on the prison testing experiments. So it became very dangerous," he said. Whistleblower Ronald Kavanaugh was a drug reviewer for the FDA in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research from 1998 to 2008. In a 2012 interview, he revealed how the FDA bypassed or ignored safety issues on major drugs approved during his employment. He also gave several examples of how he was intimidated by the agency to the point of fearing for his life and the safety of his children. Many other whistleblowers have stuck their necks out in recent years, revealing widespread corruption in medical science among researchers, drug companies, and government agencies. Many have also revealed that these agencies, organizations, and companies are not above using mafia-like tactics to maintain the status quo. A major vaccine manufacturer, Merck, which had a hit list of doctors who criticized the deadly drug Vioxx. I'm sorry, let me reread that. Merck, the company Merck, had a hit list, meaning they kept a list of all the doctors who criticized the deadly drug Vioxx. The hit list then came to light in 2009 following testimony in an Australian Vioxx class action case. As reported by CBS 15 at the time, it's a quote, Merck emails from 1999 show company execs complaining about doctors who disliked using Vioxx. One email said, "We may need to seek them out and destroy them where they live." Okay. This little thing was on the John McAfee site. I found that a couple years ago. He says Microsoft owns international patent 060606. Again, shocker. I mean, this must be a heavily charged number for these people because they use it with everything. He says a cryptocurrency system using humans who have been chipped as the miners. And so I guess he's doing, so if you want to watch that, maybe some of you have already watched that, or if you want to go watch that, you probably, I'm guessing he'd either be on YouTube or maybe Rumble, maybe, or BitChute. Let's see if you can find that. And then I found this. Again, I want to say it was like maybe 2022. DOD and HHS award $138 million contract to Abject Systems to provide pre-filled COVID-19 vaccine syringes with RFID microchip tracking system. So, please, hopefully this has not happened. Hopefully none of you have taken that, but stay away from this because this vaccine syringe has a little tracking device. Just say no. Say no to all vaccines for you and your children, not just the COVID variants, not the flu vaccines either. The flu vaccines don't work. I mean, let's be honest. They don't work. They can't keep track of the various strains. So just say no. Okay, now coming to a clinic near you. This past month, October, I had to take one of my children into the ear, nose, and throat clinic because of earwax removal. I was pretty sure it was earwax removal. You kind of get to know over the times, okay, well, what symptoms do you have? Do you have any pain? Blah, blah, blah. No pain, just couldn't hear very well. So I'm like, okay, it's probably earwax. So we went into the clinic just for an earwax removal, just to double check. And that's what it was. And so I'm sitting there filling out the paperwork and I happened to look down. And if you want to look where I've underlined, it is a new page that they've now added to the packet of paperwork. And it's a consent to patient audio recording. And I can hear some of you saying, what's the big deal about that, right? Well, if you continue to read, So where I have the blue arrow up above, I've taken a screenshot of that to enlarge it. And it says, to support our mission of providing high quality care, we are now employing a new technology which uses artificial intelligence to record audio, not video, but just audio of patient visits. Okay, so then as I kept reading, it said the EMT group maintains these recordings as an electronic health record provided by Athena Health. Okay, Athena Health. The recording software used by us is a HIPAA-compliant, web-based recording platform made by Dragon Ambient Experience, called DAX. They do love their acronyms, don't they? So it records your visit and provides tools to help your provider improve your care. We ask you to sign this form to indicate your consent, right? To have your visit recorded by Dragon Ambient, or DAX, provided to you by Athena Health. I was in such shock. And of course, down below, you can see I marked no. It says option 1, I hereby consent, and I said no. And then I said, no, we do not consent. Okay, so be looking for that coming to you if you end up having to go into a clinic or doctor's office for any reason. Make sure that Dragon Ambient, it doesn't have permission to record your visits and spy on you and get information. Okay, I mean, this is just unbelievable. Which leads me to my last slide. I think so many people ask me, what do we do? Like, what do we do? Well, I'll tell you. Our new motto and mantra must be, I don't like mantra, that's like a new age term. Our new motto is, we do not consent. Okay? We do not consent. Committee of 300, Black Nobility, Illuminati, fill in the blank brotherhood, we do not consent to your extermination agenda. We do not consent to your vaccine poison pushers. We do not consent. Okay, and here's the deal. I read it in the secret covenant. They, meaning us, must never know what they're doing, or we will push back. There is more of us, right? I mean, I don't know what I want to say. A couple weeks ago, the out here in Southern California, the main freeway that runs north and south was completely shut down on a Saturday for this No Kings protest, right? That was happening in LA. And I believe there was one up north in the Bay Area and probably down in San Diego as well. And it was in Chicago and all of the major Democratic states. It shut down the entire freeway for at least 2 to 3 hours. I looked online at the pictures. Could you have, if any of you have seen any of these protests that they're doing against Trump and all of that, there are millions of people turning out to these events. If they can orchestrate that and get that together, that should be a picture of us saying we do not consent. That should be a picture of us pushing back against their agenda. No, you cannot take our weapons. No, you cannot poison our children. No, Bill Gates, we are not going to take your vaccines. No, we are not going to eat your appeal coated fruits and vegetables. And we're not going to eat your laboratory meat either. No, we do not consent. We must stand up. We must be like, have you ever gotten a little pebble or a stone in your shoe when you're out walking? And the more you walk, it rubs your foot, just irritates. We have got to push back. We have got to say no to these things. And so the reason I do these videos, they're not to, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer or full of gloom and doom. I want you to understand what the agenda is so that you and your family can have conversations about what is our stance on this? What are we going to do? Like preparation, right? Make a decision. Where will you draw the line? What is your stance going to be? Okay, that's why I put these out. So, let me get back over here. With that being said, that is all I have for you today. And I thank you for spending your time with me. And I don't know, this one just was very sobering. I mean, a lot of these lately have been sobering because, again, this is all part of this World War III agenda, right? This is all part of their new world order, which is really, they've been at this for generations, many generations. And when one generation dies off, the next one steps up to take their place. Like, this has been going on for hundreds of years. And they're being empowered by fallen entities. And we need to stand in the authority that we have as imagers of the Most High. We as humanity were created in the image of the Most High Creator. Okay? We have the power and the authority that Messiah gave us, died to give us. We have the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit that's been given to us for wisdom. We need to follow after the spirit of wisdom and not the spirit of folly. We need not be afraid, okay? But because the day is going to come when they may not care about our consent. Let's just be honest. And some of us are going to perish, maybe as martyrs. But we cannot live in fear. Because honestly, to be absent from here is to be with the Most High. It's to be with Messiah in paradise, right? So we cannot live in fear. We have to stand in the authority that we have as humanity, sons and daughters, made in the image of our Father. These people are going to be, the scripture says on Judgment Day, they're going to be gnashing their teeth, right? They're going to find out that they've been lied to and sold lies, and they're going to spend eternity in the lake of fire. So don't be afraid. Don't live your life in fear. It's time to be bold. Every man, every woman, we have to train up our children and have these hard conversations and stand in our authority. So anyway, that being said, I hope that you have a wonderful week and stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you next time. We'll see you for the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.